Thank you. Thank you. 안녕하세요, 여러분. 반갑습니다. Hi. Yeah, welcome to joining our panel today. My name is Songyi Lee. I'm actually from Korea, Busan. I don't know how many of you guys know Busan. There's a beautiful city down in the south. I'm honored to actually hosting this conversation here. And then you guys are probably wondering, why is this lady from Busan is hosting this conversation? A little bit of my background. I started my crypto journey decades ago from West Africa, Mali. I built one of the first Bitcoin SMS wallet inspired by my trip from Africa. So I have a big heart for Africa and other impact-related work and blockchain technology. So I am really excited to have these two amazing gentlemen to share their view on the last frontier market. Why Africa is last frontier market, what are the opportunities there, what are the challenges, what are the risks, and then what we can do if you want to jump into Africa market. So we're going to cover a lot of those things in short 30 minutes, so stay focused. And let's get started. And I will ask James to introducing yourself. It doesn't have to be 30 seconds, but tell us about who you are.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for showing up right now. I know it's after lunch, so bear with us. My name is James, co-founder of Jambo, building a Web3 super app of Africa. Quick personal background. Grew up in Kinshasa in the DRC. I was there for about 16 years. Family's been in Congo 3 generations. One of the first ethnically Chinese to go. Ended up in New York, studied CS at NYU, got into crypto. Ran a crypto fund / fund of fund for a few years before starting Jambo in 2021, when I realized I got into crypto trying to solve cross-border payments, remittances, and banking the unbanked. So anyways, Jambo, as of today, we're trying to build the Web3 infrastructure to Africa. There'll be some very exciting updates I'd love to share with you guys, such as we're both doing hardware and software. On the hardware front, we're actually releasing our $100 Web3 phone next month. The guy sitting in the front row with the Jambo hat right now has it, and our partnerships, I can demo it to you guys. But pre-installed Web3 applications across 14 countries in Africa next month. So hopefully this panel we can cover some of that. Thank you.
Awesome, James. So exciting. Yoseph, please go ahead.
안녕하세요. My name is Yoseph. I am originally from Ethiopia and lived the majority of my life between Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania, and Nigeria. The internet changed my life. I learned most things online, including most of my English, and it's been a game changer for a lot of people across the African continent. But the internet has been and continues to be gated in the traditional form based on your location and zip code. So the narrative that I grew up in is that if you want to do great things in the world, you got to leave. The best building we had was the airport. The best road was the road to the airport. So that's what I did. I went to the US to do my undergrad at Harvard and then moved to the Bay Area to work in tech because those are the center of gravity. And I've been very fascinated about this notion of global citizenship and kind of challenging the status quo of nation states. And so I spent 10 years working on a new immigration program with the government to basically hack the nation state apparatus to create a layer of ability for folks to move around the world. But then I discovered crypto, and that's like amazing. This is a whole new layer of global economic coordination, and this makes so much more sense in Africa than anywhere else. Crypto is doing a lot of amazing things in the West and in the East, but let's be honest, if you're talking to the average person on the street, it's not really solving a fundamental problem for their daily lives. But in Africa, it is. And that's where the crypto primitives and tools make so much more sense. So what I'm doing right now is I'm identifying just raw, amazing talent from across the continent, investing in them and backing them because they are the ones who are building the future economic infrastructures of the continent. And the blockchain is a powerful tool to help them do that.
Thank you so much. So whenever it comes to big tech and mass adoption, we talk about like a frontier market. And then China was a frontier market, India was a frontier market, and Africa right now, for some reason, is the last frontier market that we have. And I would love to hear from you too, why you think that Africa is last frontier market and how we can actually Africa can bring them 1 billion users for the crypto in the next decades or more. James, you can start first. Yeah.
Well, before we even answer that question, let's ask ourselves this question first, right? What is Africa? Like, I grew up in Congo, DRC, colonized by Belgium, French-speaking, 150 million people, heart of darkness, Central Africa. The two largest markets in Africa right now is Nigeria and Kenya, Central and East Africa. More than 200 million people, English-speaking. You go to West Africa, Senegal, Wolof, French. Point I'm making is payments is very fragmented in this region because the entire continent is fragmented from culture, religion, everything. There is no Venmo. You can't send money to your boy from Ghana to Congo, from Kenya to Nigeria. With that out the way, how can Africa onboard the next billions of users to Web3? I think, what is Web3, right? Web3 Rails is circumventing legacy gatekeepers, circumventing the guys that were taking, the app store that takes 30% from you when you release the app, right? So progressive web apps like Friendtech, things like this can come out. Same thing in Africa right now. By using payments, Africa has already surpassed the computer system. Mobile has already leapfrogged that. 50% of Africa has mobile penetration, right? 50%, that's ridiculous. But there's still 40% unbanked. You might ask, how is that even possible? From mobile banking, challenger banks, everything like that. The reason is because people there genuinely do not know that using their phone, they can actually access broader financial access. Well, the one blocker for that in pretty much every country in Africa is it's a cash-based economy. So no one has a credit system, right? It's like your phone number in Africa is like your ENS domain. So sort of what Jambo is doing to try to onboard users in Africa is bridging the infrastructure. And we think that the infrastructure at the highest level is hardware. So it took more than a year for us to come out of our phone. We'll have a lot more announcements coming out. It's in stealth right now. But like I said, if you want to see the phone before anyone else has, it's the first time we're showing it at KBW, the guy sitting in the front with the Jambo hat. Yes, sir. Thank you. But yes, I think every region is very different. Number one in trading volume right now in Africa is Nigeria. Number two is Kenya, the Silicon Valley of Africa. But number three might surprise y'all. A country of 2.6 million people in East Africa, Botswana, just came out with a crypto license, the first one of 54 countries to do so. What does that even mean? A crypto license means you can actually have a real bank account with a bank like EcoBank, right? Not a neobank that might shut down your business tomorrow morning. You can actually have a consumer-facing app that you can actually market to your users. So many things. I just think that every decade we wonder, is this the decade that entrepreneurs will make it happen? Because we see the GDP, we see the user, we see the young numbers, we see the mobile penetration, but every time we ask, is it a decade? And I think because we're sitting up here, Yoseph, I can't speak for you, but we believe so. So that's me.
I guess a few things I'd say is Africa is not one country, it's 54 countries. We have 2,000 languages. So it's 1.4 billion people today, and it's doubling in the next 27 years as a whole population. Median age is 19. Do you know the median age in Korea? It's like in the 40s. So it's half the age of Korea. But not just that, in 27 years from now, the median age is expected to be 25. So it will continue to be the youngest population in the whole world. So it's got that demographic dynamic going for it, where a third of the world's young people are going to be in the African continent. So that's a really important thing to kind of keep an eye on. And it's not just young folks now who are just hungry mouths to feed or international aid. Middle class is growing really fast. The projections for consumer and business spending is expected to be $4.2 trillion by the end of this decade, right? So there's real money that's being spent from local Africans, and middle class is growing in that space. And when it comes to tech, as James was saying, like Africans, because we haven't had hundreds of years of institution building that many other places have. Korea is a really interesting example. You guys built so much in the last 60, 70 years. So much Africa is doing that right now by jumping on board with mobile phones, when instead of like building line cables, we just jump straight to mobile phones. And now that's the highest number of penetration that we have. And banks, we don't have ATMs in every corner like you have in other countries, right? So mobile money, now this is your bank, this is your KYC, this has got so much more capacity for you to transact and do things in the financial system. And that's been a game changer. In Kenya, more than half of the country's GDP runs through just one application, right? That's incredible. So there's that sort of first adopter mindset when new technologies arise, but traditional tech reaches a ceiling. Because again, when Africa is 54 countries, right? So if you're doing something that crosses one of those borders, you run into the global financial system, access to dollars, the payment systems that we have with SWIFT and all of that. Those are amazing tools, but they're not made for Africa. Because if you're trying to send $50, $100, you're spending 10, 20% of that just on fees alone, right? Africa is not a subscription-based economy. It's pay as you go, and it's a lot of micropayments. So the primitives of Web 2 are not set up sort of for the next chapter of where the African economy wants to go. And that's where crypto makes so much more sense. And just to kind of boil it down at a practical level, the killer app of crypto in Africa today are stablecoins, period. That's where the mass number of crypto use is at right now. And it's not just for people kind of to do some DJing stuff. It's actually traditional institutions. We're talking about oil and gas companies, manufacturing companies, companies that are actually trying to do real business, sustain themselves, saying, hey, it's actually easier for us to go to stablecoins because we'll have to go through 5, 6, 7 banks to get the liquidity that we need versus one application that can give me $50 million liquidity in one day. And they're doing that by using stablecoins. Now we're over-leveraged on just one US dollar stablecoin. I think there's an opportunity to expand that and diversify that beyond just US dollar, but also other types of stablecoins. So and that's just one example. You can go down in different sort of segments of where real use cases are. So Africa is a frontier market when it comes to crypto because to actually fulfill the potential of the crypto industry, we all need Africa. We need a place that is using it on a daily basis to sustain our lives, to sustain our economies on an ongoing basis, whether it's bull market or bear market. And I think that's what's going to take crypto to a level of maturity and mass adoption. It's not by onboarding people into our crypto conferences, it's actually taking the crypto primitives and tools directly to where the users are. And where is the mass users right now that are using this? It's in Africa.
Awesome. This is really exciting stats and then the movement. I can even feel the energy from you too, you know. And then I lovely to see that, you know, in Africa it's like it's not competing, you know. We have to grow pie together, which is this narrative is actually extend to the whole ecosystem. And it's not time for competition, but we have to work together to really support different market, different silos, and all of that. Yeah, great. So we were going to be doing some hot and cold and hot and cold. So we just did a really hot thing, why Africa is the next frontier market, and doing a little bit of cold. What are the challenges while you guys are building, while you guys are interacting with the Africa builders and industry, and maybe 2 or 3 things that you can imagine? Yeah.
Honestly, I just have one thing off the top of my mind. Like, there's just not enough money going to Africa from VCs. When's the last time you heard an African company closing a round? The guys that raise money for Africa, you know, don't actually grow up in Africa, you know, things like that. Like, if you're from Africa in the region, you're doing a project in Africa, you know what I'm talking about. So the problem that I'm seeing is there is an information gap between the actual talent in the region, because it's extremely talented, I assure you. All of our devs are from Africa. You know, not saying we have the best product. Y'all haven't seen it yet. It's coming out next month. But I just really believe in the talent in the region. And I just don't know how VCs, like, for example, we raised our last round from Paradigm, Pantera, Alliance DAO, Tiger Global. How are they supposed to go to Africa and have a thesis on the region, on the people there, on the entrepreneurs on a day-to-day basis that are grinding in the trenches? If you don't have an office there and you don't see the people and you're not African, no disrespect, I just don't know how you invest in that. So I think the biggest problem, growing challenges for the region, not just for Jambo, is more money needs to come into the region, more attention, more spotlight, hopefully more panels at conferences like this. But I think that's one of the main problems where I think just need more recognition on what's actually happening in the region.
I'll answer that question in twofold. On one side, just at a macro level, some of the big structural challenges that are happening on the ground. One is there's a lot of capital controls that is happening in many African countries because we don't want money to leave. And so the dollar issue is a multifaceted, very complex challenge, right? So as I told you, it's like the killer app has been US dollar stablecoins. And if you kind of let it free, then there's a potential risk of the whole economy being dollarized, right? And what that means is basically African countries are subsidizing the US economy, right? So there's a tension point around that. And that is felt when you talk to regulators and governments as well. They recognize that. The upside of that is opening it up allows for folks to earn money globally. So one of the things that I've been doing when meeting every regulator is calculating how many people does it take earning $3,000 a month to increase the country's GDP by 1%. And you'll be surprised, it's actually not a lot. In Kenya, it's around 33,000 people can increase the country's GDP by 1%, each of them earning $3,000 a month. In Ethiopia, it is about 22,000. In Nigeria, it's in the 60,000 range. So it's just, you can make huge dent in the economy in a meaningful way that way, but it comes at a risk. Talking about regulators, the big issue that I keep seeing is there's just not enough awareness and understanding of what crypto is. And in our worlds here, we're kind of a little bit anarchist or want to kind of break away from the nation-state paradigm and all of that, which is amazing. But we need a lot more bridge building to let governments really see the value of this, because ultimately, I believe even governments are seeking sovereignty. There are many African countries that don't control their own monetary policy, right? They don't even print their own money. 40 out of 54 African countries print their money in Europe. They pay 6% of the total money supply that they have as printing fees and transportation costs, right? So from their side, here we talk about sovereignty from our own governments. They're trying to get sovereignty over their own monetary policy, right? So these are like a lot more complex sort of things for us to flesh out. On a more practical level in the crypto industry and specifically, the few things that I see is one, there's a physical as well as social graph disconnect between the local crypto communities and builders and global centers of gravity. So I'm trying to help on that front. We took Vitalik over to Africa and spent a whole month going around 4 countries and meeting founders and ecosystems, doing a number of these trips for layer 2s for people to see like the unique market dynamics, because what builders, what users are optimizing around is so different from what users here in Korea or in the US are optimizing around. And you see sort of like helicopter projects just coming in, like, great, we're going to save Africa, or we're going to throw a bunch of money here, or we're going to farm users because it's easy to get 2 million users in a short period of time in Africa, so you can inflate your token price elsewhere. Like, we see a lot of those behaviors that aren't actually building the core economic infrastructures of the continent, and it doesn't allow players to succeed with that. Earlier, I mentioned to you about one payment application, right, where more than half of the country's GDP goes through. Those guys are printing money, but they've been playing a long-term game for 15 years, right? So if there are players that are playing a long-term game in the continent, you're positioned to be part of the furniture as the economy grows. But we don't have enough sort of that level of play.
Thank you so much. So now we are going back to the heart, and despite of all these challenges that you guys mentioned, and I'm sure there is more challenges, and we have some African builders here as well. So hope you to get to talk to them after this. But still, there is an amazing opportunity, I guess, when people want to come to Africa and do something with the African ecosystem or developer, whoever. And what are the few key opportunity you see from the Africa continent and working with the African builders?
I mean, I'll just put it this way, right? I grew up in Africa, but I went to university in New York. My friends in Africa that I grew up with, who have all families 2 to 3 generations in Africa, what that means is you've seen different political regime changes, right? Rebel president, because democracy. Okay, this is getting politics, but what I'm saying is they've been there for a long time. And if you can survive in Africa for 2 or 3 generations as a family, you're doing well. Those friends I grew up with use crypto every day on a daily basis for real life stuff. My friends that I went to New York University with They only trade crypto. They believe in it, just like I'm sure everyone in this room, I'm not saying y'all don't use crypto on a daily basis, but believe in it, but you might be trading and doing other speculative things, but not on a real life basis where you need to use this to, say you're a manufacturer of furniture. You need to pay your supplier of red wood from the Congo in Congolese francs, right? But you cannot get those capital controls through. So you need a company that does on-ramp, off-ramp that you can give stable coins to your point of stable coins adoption in Africa. I agree with that, sir. To be able to help you facilitate that. So it's all use cases in Africa. We're talking real everyday stuff. But how many times will TechCrunch or the news report on actual usage of crypto in Africa? The things that they report on is more funding news, things like that. So.
I mean, just one extra question for James. You guys are obviously bringing this a smartphone that is affordable, and they have like a Web3 native apps in it. What's the future? Let's say you guys launch this in Africa like this month, and then 1 year later we come back to this stage. What do you want to see, and then what do you want to share with the audience as a success?
All right. So our goal, right? Our phone launches in end of October. So first, let me just quick on the African smartphone context. 50% of Africans have smartphones. 1 in 2 Africans have a smartphone. 70% of that market share of smartphones is by a company called Transsion. Transsion, Transsion. It's a Chinese company, started like a decade ago. Did $7 billion revenue last year, $38 billion market cap on the NASDAQ. So it's proven. Factories out of China selling phones to Africa. Ethnically, I'm Chinese. We source from the same thing. Took more than a year to develop this phone. Now, in 1 year, if you ask me what's the bull case scenario that I can see, is more than 1 million Jambo phones sold across 14 countries in Africa, but not sold just to users for a phone. It's the earn economy, because within our phone, we don't make any money from it. It's being sold for $99, but the specs is the same specs as a $200 to $300 phone. Because we can run this like a tech company, we break even. Where we create value, you might add, like, James, why are you even doing this then? Just to bridge infrastructure? Is the software, the apps that will be pre-installed inside of this phone. Imagine you're a 19-year-old in Lagos. You come on the phone, you see the applications in a game hub and everything. You can play the games, you can do things. You're rewarded for your time. These tokens go to our Jambo wallet, which is a multi-chain wallet. Now, even if you got these tokens in your multi-chain wallet, it's no good to you as a local in Nigeria. It only makes interesting and it's fun and word of mouth will spread if there's an off-ramp where you can actually convert that into the local currency Naira and then spend it at night if you did this in a day. So if you ask me, my bull case scenario in 1 year is our phone can actually help to enable a lot of the infrastructure and the off-ramp in some regions, because we're starting with Nigeria and Kenya for the off-ramp. Yeah.
Thank you. Yoseph, do you want to share like 1 or 2 like opportunity points?
Yeah, I guess the main thing I'll keep kind of iterating is that it's a very underestimated and understood part of the global economy. And so my recommendation is spend time really getting below the surface. I think there's a lot of sort of surface level learning that happens, but we don't get direct underneath it. And my sort of philosophy around like even investing or supporting it is, on one side is just start creating value, start giving, contributing, right? I think and if you start doing that in whatever shape or form you're in, you're more likely to stand out from where 90% of the global presence is there, which is basically just trying to capture and trying to take, right? So I think once you start doing that, you raise more missionaries instead of mercenaries, and that's one framework to think about. And the beauty of crypto is that it just creates a lot of openness, right? So there's a way to build ventures or projects that is closed, and there's a way to build it that is open. When we build something that is closed, or that is kind of basically trying to capture and control and keep users in one place, then their level, like your offering is gonna only be based on the pace at which you can execute. And it's just so hard to out-execute a much more open environment and ecosystem, right? So my philosophy and view of how like a lot of financial applications are gonna be built in Africa is just so many different services that are built as Legos that work seamlessly with each other. But the catch is a lot of folks in the crypto world, we're so good at building for ourselves, not building really for the end user. So the things we optimize for is really for users like ourselves. And I think very few people actually see the world through the lens of the user. So before I started doing the work I did, I spent a year plus just talking to over 200 normal people. Like very normal. I wish we do panels with normal people in crypto conferences just to hear how they think and how they see the world and what's important to them. I think that's so important. And I think the applications that are built for the end user that doesn't really care about all the sort of micro topics that many of us love to geek around, but is really looking for a seamless user experience. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, thank you so much. We only have 2 more minutes, and I would love to close this panel with the advice and invitation. So maybe after listening to this talk, and you guys are probably here because you're interested in market, if there is anyone wants to build in Africa and with African Builder, what are your advice and what's your invitation, and how actually they can connect with you guys more to discuss further?
Oh, thank you for giving me the stage. So I'm gonna be a little more selfish, right? If you are a project in Web3 that has a mobile-ready application that wants free distribution to an African user base, pre-installed in our Jambo phone, find the guy with the hat sitting right there. Call Sam, please. So that's I'm not gonna give you any generic, this and that. Just if you have an application you think African users will love it, or you want to test out, we can straight up pre-install you in our phone. And within a month, we can collect 10,000 data points. You'll see what the African Web3 user base will like or not.
From my side, multiple folds. Basically, if, as James mentioned, let's invest in African founders because they're the ones who are going to build the future economic infrastructures of the continent, and they're very close to the market and the pain points. So I think that's the lens. Happy to chat and co-invest and all of that with folks. Come spend time on the ground. Just enjoy the beauty, enjoy the smiles, enjoy the food. I think African culture is all over the world as well. But very few of us are good at capturing that, and hopefully crypto helps with that. But come just enjoy the space and really get below the surface to really understand what's truly happening. And sometimes, it's easy to just look at things at face value. What I love to look at is actually what's the trajectory. So create if you're come for multiple times and have conversations with the same people to see what's been their growth as individuals or projects. That's more indicative of where things are going versus just what you see in one point in time.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining today on our stage, and looking forward to see you guys more here in Africa. Thank you so much.
Thank you once again, ladies and gentlemen. Please give a big round of applause for this two talents.